So we went over Uncanny X-Men 268, 8, yesterday, which was 2006 when the book came out. So we are jumping 10 years into the future with Extraordinary X-Men issue 1. Now, during this time period, this is when the MCU was really at its fever pitch, and all of us kind of waiting in limbo, waiting to see how the X-Men would enter the MCU, which was during that time with Fox and Disney and all that crap. And essentially, Marvel was trying to nix the X-Men because they didn't have the rights to the movie rights, essentially. And so, even though X-Men still had a running book, they were really trying to push the Inhumans. And I got to say, as much as I love the Inhumans, that just wasn't going to work. And it backfired. Every book that they tried to do just kind of, I mean, there were good ones here and there, but I say that to say this. Jeff Lemire, from Uncanny X-Force, Uncanny Avengers, Old Man Logan, and yes, even Extraordinary X-Men, during this time period, he was the one cat that could keep the X-Men alive. Because, I mean, this is going to be, a matter of choice. But during this time, I tried reading, what was those books? Weapon X. There was a Weapon X book. Yeah, I think it was just called Weapon X. There was X-Men Gold, Blue, and Red, which were, in my opinion, atrocious. The only other book, and this is surprising coming from me, and it may be that I haven't read it in a while, but the only other book, like, it wasn't as good as Lemire's, but it was still kind of entertaining, was surprisingly Bendis's run on Uncanny X-Men. I know. And then here's the kicker. It's Bendis and Bacalo. And I enjoyed it. After we just got done talking about that last Uncanny X-Men, we will eventually get into that. But with that said, let's focus on Extraordinary. Jeff Lemire, writer. Humberto Ramos doing the pencils. Victor Olazaba doing the inks. Edgar Delgado doing the colors. And VC's Joe Caramagna doing the lettering. Let's go ahead and read so that y'all can kind of understand where this book spawned out of. Considered to be the next step in human evolution, mutants discovered their heritage at puberty, when they manifest their superhuman powers and abilities. But rather than being celebrated for their gifts, mutants are instead confronted by a world that's never hated or feared them more. With the fate of their race hanging in the balance, Mutantkind needs heroes who will courageously lead them into the future. Mutantkind needs Extraordinary X-Men. And of course, X-Men created by Stan Lee and Jack Kirby. And I may be misremembering, but what I was trying to get at, and I thought it was written in there, but it was not, is I think this book spawned out of Inhumans versus X-Men. But then my brain kicks in, and I remember later down the road, there was a tie-in with that event. I think maybe there was a mini-series before that one. And the reason that I say that is during this time period, there's this thing called M-pox, which to me kind of feels like they're rehashing the legacy virus and M-Day, la 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 la. So mutants are, again, being blamed for being able to spread M-pox to whomever. Let's just leave it at that and get into this nice 4-panel splash right here. We see Storm and Thought. How did it come to this? We've lost so much already. The X-Men, Mutantskind's place in the world, Scott. I was foolish. I thought it couldn't get any worse, but I was wrong. I was so wrong. I've tried to keep it going. I've done things I never thought I would, just to keep the dream alive, to keep this place alive. But now something else has happened, something that has changed all of my plans. I cannot afford to wait any longer. I'm scared for what comes next. I don't know how you did this all those years. Please tell me I'm doing the right thing, Professor X. So I think now that I've read that, I think Inhumans versus X-Men came later, but there was another miniseries, and God help me, I cannot remember what it is. I have it somewhere, I think. But what happens, spoilers, the Inhumans and the X-Men face off on Muir Island. And Scott sacrifices himself. He lets Black Bolt scream him, allegedly scream him to death. And before that, they kind of lost Scott in the sense of, if y'all remember Avengers versus X-Men, which in my opinion was like the last really good Marvel event that I've seen in a long time. But Scott, Jean, Namor, Peter, I think maybe Ileana. They were called the Phoenix Five. They got infected with the the Phoenix Force, and Scott kills Professor X. And so this is kind of where all this is happening. So that's why it's more poignant when you see her sitting at that desk and looking across at Xavier. And what I like here is, I don't know if Lemire went back and looked at the archives, but if you look back, we went over the book. I think it was like X-Men 3 or 4, maybe 10. It was somewhere after their graduation. And Xavier was chasing after Lucifer, and Scott was left as the headmaster of the school. Jean, Warren, Bobby, and Hank go out to party. And as they're leaving, we start to back away from the study. And we see Scott dressed in shadow, and we hear the beeping of Cerebro, just to show that the weight, heavy as the head who wears the crown, I think is the analogy. And so it feels like to me that this is kind of where this harkens back to. And I love that it's Storm, who's always been the most, well, she's had her moments, but the most level-headed, unless you push her, which we've seen with the likes of like Calypso, or when Emma and her swap bodies. And so to see her looking for her mentor, who is no longer with them, is a very poignant moment. Now Bobby comes in, the problems start. Ileana, I love this splash page, don't get me wrong. Now again, this is I love Humberto Ramos's work. And I feel like if you look kind of at his work, it feels like he may have been inspired by Bacalo, maybe, because you can kind of see the style, but it's not as blocky. It's a little bit clearer, which I appreciate. And it kind of gives it a different vibe. But I just love how Magic just comes out of nowhere, saving these mutants. She says, "Get back! A mutant. It's another mutie. I knew they were hiding more mutants. Kill them. The gene freaks will make us sick too." I'm also a sorceress, and I cast a translation spell so we could speak with each other like rational people. But then you had to go and use language like that. And so essentially what Ileana is doing is she is doing, what's the word I'm looking for? Search and rescue of mutants on Earth. And she even gets hit by a bullet. So she's bringing all of these mutants to this base. And what I like is, because if you look at the collected trade that has this first issue, it's called X-Haven. But we don't know where the school is or why it's called X-Haven in this initial book. And that's what made this whole thing kind of fun, is there's this mistake of, okay, so if they're taking mutants from Earth, where are we going? But we can see that immediately there's not enough X-Men. They're wearing Ileana out, and they're running out of space trying to make room for everybody. Now, going back, X-Men Red, Blue, Gold. Gold had potential, but I'm not saying the guy's a bad writer, but I really do feel like Mark Guggenheim really shit the bed on a lot of stuff, especially, and a lot of us feel this way, is the bullshit thing he pulled with the marriage of Kitty and Peter. Now, granted, I will say I love that Rogue and Remy get married. That warmed my heart. But the fact that Kitty, Peter, just they go together like Jean and Scott, or Batman and Catwoman. And we're not going to get started on Tom King. But the way that Kitty just walked out on Peter, a lot of us were pissed. So that's where Gold. Ugh. Blue was the younger X-Men that Beast went back in time to bring to the future to try to get Scott to turn from being an elite fighter. Red, I don't even know. Like, apparently Jean came back from the dead. I read the miniseries and I hated it. It was so damn boring. But that said, that was written by Matthew Rosenberg, and it gets better. And we will go over that eventually. I'm saying all this because there's a lot of history behind it. Because now, this Jean that we see is not the Jean Grey that we know. And I think maybe, and I may be misremembering, I think maybe Gold and Red and Blue came after this. Because here, this is the young Jean Grey that Beast pulled into the future. After everything that happened, she just wants to live a normal life. But Storms comes. She goes, "What are you doing here?" "The X-Men need you, Jean." "Well, I don't need the X-Men. I told you I'm done being a superhero. I just want to be left alone." And I love how Bobby, the one that was always kind of picked on in the original books because he was the youngest, is now the voice of reason. Throws up an ice block. She goes, "Well, we don't always get what we want, Jeannie. Or at least we don't always get to pick when things happen. Iceman, you can't be here like that." "Like this? What, Jeannie, you're embarrassed to be seen with us mutants now? In here, I thought you were one of us." And this, I read that because the initial concept of having the original young X-Men in the future was kind of a cool concept. But as time went on, I particularly hated, from what I read, that Jean kind of the young Jean sort of became a bitch. And I don't remember if I still have the comic. I may have sold it, but there was an issue. I think it was just called Jean Grey, where she has a confrontation with her younger self, and the older her puts this teeny bopper bitch version in her place. And that was just so satisfying because I did not like this version of Jean Grey whatsoever. And the other part of, I enjoyed I enjoy Jeff Lemire. I enjoy Extraordinary X-Men, and I know he's trying to do what he can with what went before, because you have to keep some sort of canonical story going on. But I also hate how they essentially broke Peter. At this point, if you look at this very much akin to like um, Kingdom Come, where Superman isolated himself, and I just really feel it here, where Peter is back at the Ost Oryansky Collective farm, just wanting to take care of the land, have some sort of normality. And here, this is another thing where I may have a bit, and it may be that I'm misremembering again. Let me know it out in the comments. But Ileana comes. He's happy to see his sister. She's talking about what's escalating, and he's trying to say that we need you, Peter. And he goes, "Even so, what can I do? I'm a farmer. This is my home. This place needs me too." And Ileana goes, "This place? This place is not our home, Peter. Or did you forget so easily?" Now, let me know if I'm wrong. But I do remember back in the day, Peter saying something to the degree of, when he found out that he was a mutant, his parents told him that he should use that for the greater good of the USSR, I think. But from what I remember, they were a very loving family. And so this next part here just feels out of left field for me, because I don't remember any of this in the years that I've read X-Men. Ileana says, "You don't remember what it was really like here before Xavier came for us. Do you not remember the days when we barely had enough bread to fill our bellies? Have you forgotten what happened when Father first found out who you really were? Do you not remember how he forced you to sleep in the barn like an animal?" Now, if we go back to 1982, 83, when Claremont did the Ileana Storm miniseries, in the last issue, where Belasco has her walking out in the hellscape frozen landscape, and he's kind of playing with her, thinking she's back on Earth, and she goes back to the collective. And she goes to she says, "It's home. I'm so happy to be home." And she throws her arms around her mother and her father. But they don't recognize her because she's older at this point. So they say, "You're not my daughter." So that made sense in that regards. But it contradicts what Lemire does here, saying that, Ileana wanted to be with the family that she loved. So I don't know where the hell Lemire was thinking about that in this regards. And coming back and reading this later again, I'm like, I don't ever remember Peter's mother or father being pieces of crap like that. Now, again, what I love here is how Ileana has kind of embraced the Dark Child at this point. And she pulls her soul sword, slashes it at Peter. He grabs it. Now, that's the big brother I know and love. Put the vodka away and get your uniform. Where are we going? we're going to get your best friend. And then we have a moment with Nightcrawler, which is interesting. We don't get a whole lot of where he's at, but apparently he is a prisoner of something and he's trying to escape. And then we get, and I feel like if they would have got rid of the whole bitchy parts of Jean, I would have enjoyed this book more. But this whole, oh, I'm so sad and life's so hard and I don't, shut the hell up. But she goes, you should find someone who shouldn't be here. Now, spoiler alerts, if you guys have not been keeping up the last 10, 15 years, God, I feel old. Middle 2000s, Marvel decided it would be just a gas to kill Wolverine. Now, don't get me wrong, the death of Wolverine was an interesting read, and we will go over it. But out of the ashes of that, they did kill off the main 616 Logan. But after Secret Wars, they did bring the old man Logan into our universe. And so, at this point, this is where Logan, old man Logan, joins the X-Men. And I will say, I don't like this. This is too damn blocky for Wolverine. Now, don't get me wrong. He's supposed to be older, which, the old man Logan, when Mark Millar did it, it was cool. It was a concept. But I felt like Jeff Lemire's old man Logan run, chef's kiss. Ed Brisson's got a little silly towards the end. But I just feel like the more that it kept dragging on and on and on, it just really felt like the old man Logan thing got to be kind of a shtick, and it got really old really fast. And so I kind of had a little secret leap for joy when they finally got rid of him and brought our Wolverine back. But anyway, that is essentially Extraordinary X-Men in a nutshell. And as I said, I love Jeff Lemire. He does some great writing, and he does know how to do X-Men relatively well. It's just he's having to, and this is one, like when after he left Marvel, he was talking about how he's great that he doesn't have to try to work around events and all this stuff. He could finally make his own original books, which I understand. So he's trying to do the best with what he has here. And there's another issue. I can't remember if we've gone over it yet. If not, we will eventually go over it, where we get to meet Old Man Forge. And he goes back to using the artwork from Old Man Logan. And oh man, it is one hell of an excellent read. So with that said, if you've enjoyed what you've seen, please first and foremost support your local comic shop or wherever it is like to get your action figures and comics and pick up this issue. If you've enjoyed this review / little rant, really would appreciate if you take a moment to like, share, and subscribe. Helps the channel more than you could possibly know. And if you don't mind hitting that fancy little X bell next subscribe, that way as we get to upload content, you guys get notified. Come to the channel, and I love talking with y'all and hearing your thoughts and feedback down in the comments or the socials, which I'll make sure the links down in the description. And if you enjoy what I do, and you'd like to help support the channel, I have also left a PayPal tip jar link down in the description. And if not, still appreciate y'all stopping by and checking out the video. Either way, thank you so much for stopping by. Hope y'all continue to have an absolutely amazing day reading, and happy hunting, everyone.